Google friends, I hope you are all doing well. It is a rainy day in Manchester. It's often a rainy day in Manchester, but particularly very rainy today. It doesn't seem to have stopped over this past week or so. Anyway, let me tell you what I am up to today. I was very fortunate yesterday, in a break in the weather, a slight break, to go and visit my friend Rachel. See her YouTube channel, Don't Crop Me Now. Her allotment. She invited me to go down and see where she's up to, what she's been doing, and also to give me some goodies. I am a very lucky girl. Take a look at this beast behind me. This is a pumpkin, well, a squash. I can't remember the exact species of it, but I think it's called a blue something. I will look it up and I will pop it down at the bottom there so you can see. This is a beast. I would have shown you it all together, you know, in one piece, but before Chris went to work this morning, he chopped it in half for me. It was a case of my big knife and a rolling pin to bash it, the knife through to get into it. Let's have a look inside. This is seriously heavy. Have a look at that goodness in there. That looks, and it smells amazing. So one of my jobs today is to dig through this. I'm going to cut it into big wedges and pop it in the oven and roast it. Once it's been roasted, I will then take the skin off, because the skin is an absolute nightmare to take off pumpkins and things like that. So I'm going to leave the skin on. I'm going to give it the skin a wipe, leave the skin on, roast this, obviously after having taken all the seeds out and everything. And then I'm going to think of varying things that I can do with it. The other things that I got in here, some potatoes that managed to survive the frost, because we had just before Christmas, what was it, -7, -8 round here. It survived. She's also given me some beetroots. Now I have some more beetroots in the freezer. So I'm thinking I'm going to make, and I have some apple in the freezer from our apple tree. So I'm going to make a beetroot and apple chutney that can go on my pantry shelves. And this weird looking creature that I think looks like some kind of slug creature coming to get you. If you are a Star Trek fan, now this is going to be a random thing. Star Trek fan, episode Next Generation with Reg Barclay, where the creatures are in the transporter. That's what it reminds me of. Majority of you are probably sat there going, what? What are you on about? Yes, I'm a bit of a Trekkie. So that's what it reminded me of. But this is a kohlrabi. And this I'm going to peel, chop into thin sticks, put it with some red onion and put it with some carrot, and in a tub, going to make some coleslaw. Now when I make coleslaw, I don't add the mayonnaise to the coleslaw mix because it doesn't last as long. So I just make the dry mix and then store it in the fridge and then add the coleslaw, the mayonnaise to it when I need it. So busy old me today, chopping and prepping and cooking in the kitchen. So I've chopped them all up into chunks. That took effort and about half an hour. It's hard to make the chunks all the same size, so I've chopped them as best I can. I've found the biggest pieces and I've put those on the tray first. These smaller, thinner pieces will go in next. I'm just going to pop these in the oven at about 180 fan, which I think should be okay. I've just made sure that I've got space between them so that they will cook a bit more evenly, and I'm just going to keep an eye on them and see how long they take. It's quite a dense squash, so I'm thinking it's going to be minimum half an hour, probably longer, but I'll let you know how long it took. So all the squash has been roasted off now. So this was my first lot, my bigger stuff, nice and tender and cooling off. This is the second lot, which is still steaming, so I'm going to leave this to completely cool. Now the worst thing about using squash, apart from the cutting up, is the state it leaves your trays. So all the sugars are coming out while it is cooking and it sticks to your trays. So don't do me, and you know, maybe put some parchment or something on the bottom that you can easily remove. But for me, these are just going to go in the sink. with, I think, a dishwasher tablet just to kind of start lifting everything off. First thing I'm going to make with this cool down squash is I'm going to make some gnocchi. So traditionally that would be potato, flour, bit of salt, an egg to bind. I've not got any eggs in, I've run out of eggs, so I'm not too worried about it because this is quite a moist squash, but not completely wet. If it was too wet, I'd probably dry it off a little bit more. I'd put it in a pan and just press it down in a frying pan and roast it off, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get a bowl. I'm just going to start peeling off the outside, which is really great because that comes off really easily. And I'm just going to do it until I have got enough for me to start making the gnocchi. I've just mashed this with a potato masher until it has gone nice and smooth. I'm going to add a little sprinkle of salt. And then I'm just going to start adding plain flour and start mixing it together till it starts to create a dough. So I've got a big cupful to start with. And I know it's probably going to take more than that. And I'm just going to mix it. And the flour's just there really to create a binding agent so that you get in a dough. Right. You can see still very moist. Go in with another scoop. Okay. I'm trying to be careful and not throw the flour all over the place like I normally do. Okay, more flour, still not quite at that dough stage. Okay. When it becomes difficult to mix, you could do this with a stand mixer on the dough hook, would be the better one than a K paddle or one of the normal paddles, and that'll just knock it too much. Right, we're starting to get a bit more dough-like, but still a little bit sticky. So keep going, making sure all that flour gets mixed in. But yeah, still too sticky. Gonna go in with even more. So another cup. What's that? Cup number 4. I might go in with my hands in a minute just to get it to work a little bit better. Yeah, I'm going to go out on the table. Just going to dry this bench off a little bit because it's a little bit damp from where I wiped it before. So there we go, nice dry bench. Let's pop all this out. This is where we start to make a mess. And this is where my hands go completely filthy. Could wear gloves if you wanted to. So just do it like you're kneading bread. Bring it over to bring the flour inside. Again, you can see it's still a little bit tacky. Keep going, more kneading. It's getting there, it is really getting there. Like I say, you're just going to keep kneading and adding a little bit more flour until you get to a nice dough consistency. These little spots here are just where it got caramelized, so That's why you're noticing little brown spots, but you want to keep going until you run out of stickiness, and then it'll be ready. This is nice and dough-like. It's lost the majority of its stickiness. I put in another cup or so of flour. Now, how much flour you put in will completely depend on how moist your original product to start with is. So whether you're making it with potato or whether you're making it with a squash of some kind, you've got to add more flour depending on how wet it is. So I am going to start getting this ready. I'm going to break some off. I'm going to put a bit of flour down on my surface because I know as I cut it, I know it will still stick to the table because that's the way it behaves. So I'm just going to break off some, pop it in the flour, roll it out to the thickness I want, and then I will just start cutting it into my little gnocchi shapes. So there we go, and I dip my knife into some flour as well just to help, and you're just cutting little gnocchis off. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to pop these onto a floured tray. Look, see, tray got clean. Much easier with a dishwasher tablet. I just broke it in half and put half in each one with some more mortar. Left it for about 20 minutes and it was absolutely fine. So, gnocchis onto the tray. I'm not going to put them randomly because if I put them randomly, they take up too much space. So I'm going to do them like that, and then I'm going to pop these in the freezer because I don't want to use them today because we're going to have pumpkin, squash soup tonight with some bread, and I want to save these for other dishes. The gnocchi is on 2 trays and in the freezer, so we're going to make a pumpkin loaf now. This is the recipe I am using, so if you want to have a look at this, pause it now. And I'm doubling this recipe because I'm going to make 2 loaves because, if you're going to make 1, why not make 2? So I've started off with the flour in the bowl. You do your wet and dry ingredients separately. So I'm starting off with my dry. So this is 2 cups plus 3 extra tablespoons of plain flour. I'm going to add half a cup of white sugar. Let me just get my half cup measure. Now I'm going to add a cup because I'm making double. This is what the problem is when you start making double, is you need to remember you're making double. And this is a half cup measure, so I'm going in with 1/2 cup and a second half cup. Okay, then a cup of brown sugar. Okay, that's that. Now it's baking powder and baking soda. So it should be 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda. So that is 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. So here we go. There is 1. And I had a half measure as well. And there's our half. Next, baking powder. 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. So we're doubling. So that's a teaspoon of baking powder. Teaspoon. Then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we need a teaspoon of salt. So I'm just pour that in very slightly under. Then 1/2 teaspoon, so a teaspoon of cinnamon and a teaspoon of mixed spice. But as we don't measure those, we just go in like that. And we go in like that. So that is our dry ingredients. So I'm going to swap us over. We're now going to go to our wet ingredients. Wet ingredients. 1.5 cups, so 2 lots of 3/4 cup of pumpkin puree. So that's our pumpkin. I tried to pick the bits that were least toasted because I don't want to see any burnt bits in there. And then we are going in with 1/3 cups this time. So I need to find my 1/3 cup. Measure it. Hello, Tilly. There we go, 1/3 cup measurer. So 1/3 of a cup of oil, so that's 2 lots of these for the double portion, and it's just a neutral oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil. So that's 1/3, and another 1/3. Then same again of water, so 1/3, and another 1/3. These squeezy bottles are so handy. Okay, that's our water. Now, it's meant to be 1 large or 2 small eggs. So 2 eggs. But I don't have any eggs in, so I'm using my egg replacer, which is a powder I got from Holland and Barrett. So for my egg replacer, to replace 1 whole egg is a teaspoon of egg replacer. So we're going to double that. So that's 2 teaspoons of egg. Do you know what? Because it says 1 large or 2 small, I'm going to assume these are medium. I'm going to go in for 3. Yes, Tilly, I am. Exactly. So if you're doing it with eggs, it would be 4 small eggs or 2 large eggs. Then I have to put in water with this as well. So it's 2 tablespoons of water for every bit of egg replacer. So that's going to be 6 tablespoons of water. 1, 2, 3, 4, but I've had splashes over the side, so I'm going to go 5.5 because of all the splashes. Tilly, stop arguing with me. I'm just doing what I'm doing. You know, leave me alone. Please excuse Tilly, everybody. She is in a very argumentative mood today. Right, I'm going to mix all this together. So this is our wet mixture. Very slimy and sloppy. Make sure, if obviously with this egg replacer, I'm having to make sure it's whisked in well. I don't want to leave any lumps of it. Looks pretty good. Yeah. But what I could have done is I could have put the dry part of the egg replacer in with the dry ingredients and the wet part in here. In fact, that would have probably have been a little bit easier. But I've done it now. So, wet into dry with a scraper. Make sure that every single part of this goes in there. Oh, I don't want to waste any. Chris always says if he'd be terrible in working in a kitchen because he'd spend so long scraping bowls and pans that he'd never actually get any work done. So that has gone with that. And I'm just going to give this a mix until it's completely mixed. I mixed the pumpkin mixture together with the dry ingredients. I've decanted it into 2 loaf tins, so that's that done. This is my bread that I'm going to go in. I used my normal bread recipe, which I have posted on here before, but this time I've done it with whole wheat. And you're meant to put in 7 grams of instant yeast. I only had 3. So I went online and it said you can substitute some yeast for bicarb with some water. No, bicarb with acid. So I put some bicarb in and I put some lemon juice in. So we shall see how that turns out. If it turns out well, it would be interesting to see if I could do the whole bicarb acid recipe, which would bring me more like a soda bread. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. These are going in the oven at about 175 to 180. The pumpkin loaf is going in for, I gotta find my recipe. Oh no. 45 to 60 minutes. It depends on your oven and how big your loaves are. So we shall pop that in and do that. Over here we still have some pumpkin left, so I'm going to take all the skin off the rest of this. I'm going to get some ready for tonight's soup to go with the bread, and the rest of it I'm just going to pop in some freezer bags and freeze it for future use. Chris has just got home from work. Say hello.
Hi.
He's not happy about being on camera, but he is happy because we've got pumpkin bread. Yeah. So cut us a slice and see how it's come out.
What slice?
A normal slice.
Oh, it's very soft.
Right, try that. Tell me what you think.
Oh wow.
Good stuff.
It's similar to banana bread, but it's softer.
Thumbs up.
Almost nutty. Yeah, it's lovely. Right,
Fabulous. Right, that's the banana bread sorted. Oh, sorry. Big loud noise. You can see that. And the dog's barking because it is absolutely heavens. I've just opened. So I've got some of the squash. I'm adding the last remnants of my stock. I'm putting in some water just to thin it down. We're going to bring that up to a simmer and then add some other flavours to it. This is warmed through slightly, and I'm going to put in some peanut butter. I don't know why, I just feel as though this is going to be a good flavour. So we're risking it and seeing. And then near to the end of the cook, I'm putting some sweet chilli sauce in. I think it'll be really nice. Let's see what Chris thinks. So this is ready to serve up, not heat up, it's ready to go. I'm going to put in a bit of that stuff that we talked about. Only a tablespoonish. I think that will add a nice bit of sweetness but a little bit of spice. The bread, it's not bad considering. A little bit of a dense crumb, but tastes good, that's the main thing. So you could get away with it in a push. It'd probably be better off if in a white bread as opposed to a wholemeal because it's a bit denser. So let's pour some of that soup into there, nice and thick. Get a spoon, have a little taste. In fact, no, I'm going to dunk a little bit of bread in there. Don't judge me on the butter. Oh, that's nice. Okay, that works. So, next time you make squash soup, have a think about putting those in. See what you think. Here's the gnocchi out of the freezer. All I did was get the tray and do this to get it moving. So that was all moving. That's fine. I'm going to cook it from frozen. Don't defrost this gnocchi. If you've not cooked it through the first stage, so if you've not boiled it and cooled it, this gnocchi will then go quite doughy. So don't defrost it. Just put it straight in to your boiling salted water, which is what I have got over here, is some boiling salted water. I've had the lid on to make sure it stayed on a nice rapid boil. I'm going to throw some gnocchi in. Whoop. Yeah, just be careful of that. And what you're waiting for is the gnocchi to rise to the surface. Don't overcrowd your pan too much, that will be enough. The rest of the gnocchi I'm going to put into a freezer bag to go in the freezer. And we are just going to wait now. I'm going to pop this lid back on to bring it back up to the boil again. We're going to wait for this gnocchi to rise up, and then it'll be ready to go into this pan where I have got some butter just melting, and that's where we're going to fry the gnocchi off, which will give it that nice toastiness. So we'll just wait for this gnocchi to boil. Right, you can see how the gnocchi is up at the top. What else I'm going to do is just ladle it out carefully, and it's going to go straight into our butter pan. So you can see now we are hissing and a spitting. Now to go with this, I have got some spring greens that I had frozen, or greens they just were, and some frozen peas. And all I'm going to do is I'm not going to waste this boiling water that I've just cooked this gnocchi in. I am just going to quickly blanch those peas and those greens in there. Now the only thing I did with the greens was I chopped them up a bit finer because they were quite big pieces, and made sure that I got rid of any pieces that were really tough, you know. Oh, like this. You see there? You get quite hard ribs of the greens. So that's just going to go in there for a minute or two. I'm going to put the lid back on because I want to retain as much heat as possible. So that water is just the salted water. We are just going to make sure that these individual gnocchis are hitting the pan so that they can get nice and crispy and toasty. There we go. And I'll take a few minutes to do that, and all I will do is I'll just keep an eye on it, and I will give the pan a little bit of a shake. I will turn the gnocchis over, and then when this is nearly ready to serve, we will transfer the peas and the greens in there, and we will add some extra flavourings. Well, I don't know what's happened. I've just gone through my video. Well, I looked at my recording and you stopped recording. Well, not you personally, but the phone that I'm recording on stopped recording. So I'm going to tell you what I've done. As you can see, the gnocchi, I cooked it till it was nice and toasty. I did not turn it over until it had got this crispy outer layer. Once it had turned over, I then put my greens in, which I had drained through a sieve, put those in, tossed them all together. I've sprinkled some sage on there as well. So I was showing off as well. I was doing my superbly expert tossing skills. You see, look. See? How cool did that look? And you would have missed it. And added a little bit. So I saved a little bit of the water that the gnocchi had been cooking in. And I tossed that in so that it enabled it to create a bit more sauciness. So I had tasted it, but I will taste it again, just, you know, for camera purposes. And I'm sure you can imagine how it tastes. That tastes darn good. I'm quite impressed with that. It's the sage that really makes it. It just absolutely tastes delicious. Peas and greens are, you know, it's all full of good stuff and healthy. Yeah, the butter, not so healthy, but still really tasty. Sorry about the glitch though. So those are the 3 recipes that I made so far using that pumpkin that I've videoed. I did make another one and I completely just didn't even think about videoing it, which was I made a pizza, but instead of using tomato as the base, I just used some of the mushed up pumpkin and sprinkled a little bit of oregano on top, and then I did mushrooms, peppers, onions and some cheese on top. And yes, that was a success. Really, really, really tasty. So if you have pumpkin or squash, substitute it for your tomato. Go for something different. Really, really tasty flavours. Anyway, let me show you what I've got left of my pumpkin. So in my freezer somewhere, where did I put it? Well, I'll tell you, so you can see, there's the rest of the pumpkin loaf, which I've just sliced and frozen. Yeah, that's just a little knobble of flour that I hadn't mixed in very well, but that's frozen. That does really, really well. I'm just going to decant that into some bags. There's the rest of the gnocchi, which is there, which is brilliant because I can use that whenever I need it. And the rest of the pumpkin is, it says roasted carrot, but it's actually pumpkin. So the rest of the pumpkin is in there to be used whenever we need it. Quick squiz across to the fridge. There is my coleslaw that I made. So it's just carrot, the kohlrabi, and, oh, you've gone out of focus there. Oh, carrot, kohlrabi, and some onion. And as I said, I don't add any mayonnaise to it. I just leave it in there. We had that on a burger a couple of nights ago, which was really, really tasty. This is some of, that's leftover mincemeat from Christmas. This is some of the chutney that I made. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So the chutney, sorry if it's a little bit darker in here, this is not the best room for lighting. So the chutney, I did make absolutely loads of it. Where is it? Here we go. apple, beet and carrot chutney. So I got some carrots that I'd got in, plus some apples out of the freezer, and that I've used the basic recipe that I have made before, which I will post in the comments, no, in the description box below. And I made that in the slow cooker in the Instant Pot. It took about 4.5 hours. Worked out really well. So that's everything you can do with the Blue Hubbard squash. Well, not everything. What else would you do with the Blue Hubbard squash? I've just run up the stairs. I am so unfit. I really do need, maybe I should go on this bike a little bit more often. Right, anyway, take a breath. Let me know in the comments below if there are other things you think I can do with some of the rest of that squash. I would love some more recipes and ideas. So remember, the squash has been roasted already. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do the liking and subscribing as usual, and I will see you next time.